Howdy, y'all. This is Taylor Ursula of That's So Pisces, and the moonlight wanes. And so we inspect this third quarter moon in Aquarius. This third quarter moon in Aquarius is taking place at 11 degrees on Wednesday, May the 1st, at about 4:30 a.m. here on the West Coast. Okay, so on Tuesday, the last day of April, we have the moon make its way into Aquarius. This is also the same day that Mars makes its way into Aries, as well as Venus making its way into Taurus. So there's a bit of a planetary homecoming energy happening around this third quarter moon, which is really lovely if we think about this being the final moon in the Aries new moon cycle that is helping us close things out to make space for the Taurus new moon that we'll be having next week. So it's really lovely to think about us having this Taurus new moon with Venus newly at home and also past the Pluto square, which is something we have happen here on this Tuesday. So on Tuesday, the moon enters into Aquarius and promptly makes a square to Venus at 1 degree of Taurus. So it's interesting that we have the same aspect happening at the third quarter moon as we did at the first quarter moon, okay, right? So let's recap then. We had Venus hanging out in Aries at the time, and the moon in Cancer at that first quarter moon made a square to Venus in Aries at 11 degrees. We now have the moon entering into Aquarius and promptly making that square to Venus newly in Taurus at 1 degree, I think, 2 degrees. And so there is some sort of replication of some of these energies. Let's explore the differences. At the first quarter moon, we had the moon in domicile and Venus in detriment. Here we have the moon in Aquarius, which is not its sign of detriment. Capricorn technically is, but it is still a Saturn-ruled sign. It is a sign that is not visible from Cancer, and it is a sign that tends to detach emotionally rather than what the moon in Cancer does, which is very much attach emotionally. So we've got the moon not technically in detriment, but still pretty out of its element here in Aquarius, making a square to Venus now in domicile. So Venus has switched from being in detriment to being in domicile, and the moon has switched from being in domicile to being out of its element, okay? So what does this mean to us? What does this bring up? We talked about that square to Venus bringing up some feelings of being sentimental, of thinking about and acting on feelings of caring we have for others. And that may have been bringing up where we were compelled to care for people who were not supporting our efforts of individuation or autonomy with Venus in Aries. Okay, but now Venus is in Taurus, feeling very resourced, feeling very grounded, having exactly what Venus needs. And the moon in Aquarius isn't necessarily comfortable with being sentimental. Sentimentality is a distraction to Aquarius. It's maybe something nice, but it's not very productive. It doesn't actually inform how we want to shape public policy, right? And so there might be some different ends of that same kind of spectrum of experience we opened up with that first quarter moon in terms of where I would typically feel maybe, again, like sentimental or nostalgic here. The planets involved are not necessarily in signs that feel comfortable with hanging on to those feelings. So interesting to think about as an energy that we are closing out or that we're experiencing as we wind down and the moonlight begins to fade. There may be where we need to be intellectual and where we need to maybe compartmentalize, motivating us to get clear on what connections feel good right now, perhaps, what connections feel resourced, where we feel grounded in how we connect with other people. The moon makes a conjunction to Pluto at 2 degrees. So right out of that square to Venus, there is some deep, intense, maybe integration or understanding about what that square has meant to us. perhaps we're thinking about the differences in those two parts of our charts, for example, or those differences in those experiences, and we're getting a sense of where we can find overlap and integrate, where we can make sense of and process and understand. I'm thinking back to strength energy and thinking about those dual processes that we've been talking about, right? Where we have our instincts, our gut, and where we just feel connected to stuff, and then where we think about it and make sense of it and process it, and logic enters. And so needing to balance those two entities within us, right? It's not helpful if one of them is overpowering the other. And so that might be some process that's available to us as the moon makes a conjunction to Pluto. However, Venus then goes into the square to Pluto at 2 degrees. Okay, so Venus is feeling all resourced, is feeling all cozy, is drinking that tea that Venus loves, and has that blanket that Venus just thinks is so cozy. And Pluto comes along. Okay, now this is an energy we're going to get used to for the next 20 years, if you can believe it. Okay. Every time Venus is in Taurus now, Venus will encounter Pluto. What does that mean? I believe, especially if we weave in the South Node story, we are thinking about what that South Node Libra has represented to us thus far, where that people pleasing has come in, where we've made accommodations or compromised in ways that have sold us short or that have undermined our own authority or agency. And with Venus hanging out in Taurus, still ruling this South Node for the rest of the year. Okay, the South Node will be in Libra until January of 2025. So everything Venus is doing will play a part in that unraveling story. There may be some habits. Let's think about Taurus. We may have some habits. We may be stubborn. Taurus can be a stubborn sign. We may have some resources or some practices that we've outgrown, right? Just because Venus is in domicile in Taurus doesn't mean that everything Venus is doing in Taurus is good for us, right? Doesn't mean that all of that is actually what we need or what we want or what helps us thrive. If we are shedding a lot of those Libra qualities, it makes a lot of sense that Pluto would be challenging Venus to think about what of those Taurus qualities still serves us, right? What of those Taurus qualities have we outgrown or have become gluttonous or have allowed us to become fixed or fixated or stuck in some place in our lives, right? So that Venus square to Pluto certainly does ramp up this question of what is the power of your resources? What power lies in your connections? Where is there dissonance right now? Where are you being called to evolve beyond maybe what's been comfortable in Taurus? Okay. Uranus has certainly been shaking that up for the past several years and continues to do so. But Pluto does so in a very different way. Uranus jolts us, maybe gets us to try something new or cease something old, but Pluto makes us think about it, really confronts us about the patterning, right? Uranus just goes bam, all right? Uranus is emerald, okay? But Pluto is really going to make us think about why we got as far as we did in those fixed habits, what power those habits have, what was conditioned within us to value these Taurus resources and connections. Pluto's going to make us work for it. Okay. Uranus was like, bam. And Pluto's like, now think about it. Now, since Venus is newly in Taurus and the sun is in Taurus, this means that whatever that square brings up is going to be very prevalent for when the moon squares the sun at 11 degrees on Wednesday the 1st. It's very much going to color what we are called to let go of, right? Now, this is not Venus ruling the moon, and this is a third quarter moon. This is Venus ruling the sun, which is what the moon is in confrontation with at this square. And so it may be more about what we are intellectualizing and structuring and conceptualizing in Aquarius, confronting what we feel, what we currently embody in Taurus, what we are rooted into. And so as that square occurs and we are called to focus on what we are now going to release, as the light of the moon is waning now, we might be doing so from this lens of, well, what do I currently embody and how am I currently intellectualizing things? Again, back to the strength card, right? Okay. We have the moon make a sextile to the north node in Aries at 15 degrees. So even though there's the confrontational energy, even though there's some of the either or, and we're trying to find the difference in the middle, or we're trying to find the middle ground, this sextile to the north node does reveal to us perhaps where we are hungry to be moving toward that north node. Maybe we see revealed what we are currently moving through and releasing that is freeing up space for that north node to further explore those Aries themes. We have a sextile from the moon in Aquarius to Mercury in Aries at 17 degrees. And this is Mercury moving through its retrograde shadow. So you may recall that we had Mercury station direct 2 days after the Scorpio full moon that we talked about last week. So it's only made it 2 degrees in that time, right? Mercury's moving very slowly as it moves through that shadow. But the moon in Aquarius is making a connection to what Mercury is beginning to process, right? So it feels very in line with this third quarter moon. We are processing what has transpired. We are making sense of what we've already seen with Mercury in its retrograde period. And now we're probably filing away or disposing of what Mercury has determined we don't need anymore, or it's time to recategorize. The moon makes a sextile to Chiron in Aries at 20 degrees. And this may be a continuation of that conversation we just had with Mercury, considering Mercury was conjunct Chiron at the Scorpio full moon. So there may be a sorting out of what those two planets have been talking about, getting clear on what we currently have the ability to release that is connected to that Chiron story, especially since we started off the lunation cycle with the new moon eclipse exactly conjunct Chiron as well. This is now the moon in Aquarius finishing up this cycle and putting those things away or bringing those things up to the surface to remove. The moon then makes a square to Uranus in Taurus at 22 degrees. Okay, so yeah. So we still have, let's go back to Emerald and Bam. We may have some sudden new feelings, some sudden new possibilities, some sudden new disturbances as we're moving through this process of intellect versus instinct and how we make space for both. Something new may arise out of the conversation with Chiron. There might be a surprise element that we find available to us now that we've had that conversation with Chiron. We may need to address something suddenly with this square to Uranus after the conversation to Chiron. We may have a sudden change of feelings, right? As we've then connected with Mercury and Chiron here, we might be wrapping things up and suddenly have a change of heart that allows us to release in some way. On Thursday, we have the moon make a square to Jupiter in Taurus at 24 degrees, and we can see that Jupiter and Uranus are slowly making their space from each other post-conjunction. This square may have us feeling a sense of possibility at this time, right? Like we might feel more of a sense of abundance here. We might feel some sense of responsibility that we are releasing or connecting with at this time with the moon in Aquarius squaring Jupiter. And this is the same day that Pluto stations retrograde in Aquarius at 2 degrees. So we will have Pluto retrograde for most of the summer at this point, and we will see Pluto make its way back into Capricorn for its final stand at 29 degrees. We'll make a whole video about that at some point because that's going to be very epic in itself. But it's compelling to think about how Pluto has played such a part in all of the lunation phases leading up to this third quarter moon. And at this third quarter moon, we have Pluto stationing retrograde. So we are revisiting some of those conversations about what Pluto has brought up for us here in Aquarius so far. Venus making that square to Pluto is also the last aspect to Pluto before Pluto stations retrograde. So that will color a lot of the themes that Pluto goes back through as it makes its way through its retrograde. Okay, let's do a recap of our 3 moon phase pulls so far. We will recap our Aries new moon, our Cancer first quarter moon, our Scorpio full moon, and then we'll take a look at what we are preparing to release here in this Aquarius third quarter moon. So stay tuned.
Okay, so here we have our pulls from the last 3 lunation phases. Starting off with the special pull that we did for our Aries new moon eclipse, our Cancer first quarter moon, and here our Scorpio full moon. If you missed any of these, pause here, head back, take a peek, and catch up on these narratives. And then meet us back here, and we will complete this lunation cycle with our Aquarius third quarter moon pull. Okay, let's get started. So, a quick reminder that if you'd like to pull along, you can do so by downloading the free Moon Phase Tarot Pull PDF on my website at priestessbaby.com/store. Okay, so as we reflect on this lunation cycle and we anticipate this third quarter moon, we are looking at what is coming to a close now, as well as my previous attachment to what is ending now. How I can make meaning from this process. And lastly, what I can invite in at this time. Okay. And we will take a look at the bottom of the deck as well, as we've been doing. And we'll just get a sense of what kind of lies beneath the themes we're seeing at this time. Okay. Okay. What do we have? Oh, this is a really nice, like Taurus-y homecoming, as we've talked about with both Venus and Aries, kind of card. And it kind of adds a little bit of maybe a feeling of stability in the otherwise kind of tumultuous narrative we've been through, especially last week's when we were kind of stepping out of a lot of roles, or maybe recognizing where it's time to step into playing more roles, where we've been getting a sense of who we are and like what we're trying to root into, right, is what we've been talking about. And so that's a beautiful theme that is supported by this Four of Wands, which sees us maybe desiring to, or hoping to, or imagining what creating 4 walls around our hearts currently look like. And not in a blocking off our hearts way, but in a stabilizing and supporting our hearts. What is home to us? What's our hearth? What holds us, right? Okay, let's see what's here. Love that only what is coming to a close is reversed. Very interesting. Okay, so what is coming to a close now is some conflict. Okay, so when we see the 5, we see conflict that goes nowhere. We see butting heads. We see running into a wall. We see literally these 5 swords blocking our progress forward. We can't go anywhere. These swords have been thrown down. This is a wall. We can't move forward. So with this coming to a close, we are deciding what to do here. Are we pulling those swords out and reconciling? Finally reuniting, right? With swords being a Mars weapon, which separates, okay? So these swords have been separating us. Are we pulling these out now, right? Are we reaching in and pulling these out and reuniting these opposing forces? Are we walking away? Okay, so those are maybe opposing decisions Let's see what else we have. But we have some sort of resolution to the conflict. Okay, we have some sort of reconciliation of what the conflict has been about, whether or not we reconcile the relationship with the person or the place or the entity with whom we've had this conflict, but we are making peace with the conflict and taking space from it in some way. The conflict itself and like the production, the unproductive conflict, right, itself is what is ending. Okay. My previous attachment to what is ending now. Maybe what's ending now was something that was really expansive. Maybe this conflict wasn't, I mean, let's think about how we didn't always have this, right? This is making me think about like the before and the after. And we can really see like the shift here in these colorscapes, in these backgrounds. Even the sand here feels brighter. You know, obviously the sky is brighter in this photo, in this card, in this image, in this story. But the sand, even the ground looks brighter. And things have dulled, right? Things have dulled over time. So our attachment to it is that what this has turned into started off as something really beautiful, started off as really like an exploration or a journey, some entity of expansion, some experience of opening us up and showing us possibilities, right? And this is like the beginning of a journey. This is a very Aries energy. Like I am exploring, I've made the plan, and I'm setting now down this path. And as I do so, I recognize that there will be little roads and little detours that I can travel along that will continue to open me up and expand my world. And so maybe we are attached to what this once was for us before we got to this point of conflict where we could no longer move forward. Okay, so our attachment is that this used to be open. This used to be something we could cross, something we could travel, traverse, explore, and it's been closed off. The roads have closed. Okay. How we can make meaning from this process. Okay, this showed up for me personally as well this week, and I love thinking about the continuation of the wands. So how we can make meaning from this is to understand that this is just one stop of many on this long journey that we're on. We can maybe zoom into the immediate and think about you're almost done with this immediate entity. Again, the conflict is coming to a close. I can make meaning of this by saying, all right, I've made it to like kind of the final leg of this particular chapter of my life. I've made it to, I'm almost done with, and I'm just like, I'm holding in there for the final leg of this tour, okay? So on an immediate level, this could be hang in there. Make meaning from this by thinking about what it is you are kind of approaching at the finish line here and like what this has all been about, right? A 9 is towards the end of the journey. We saw the 10 earlier on in our Cancer first quarter moon spread. We saw that we had to put something down. Okay, so this is us kind of reaching that place of like, you're almost there. You can almost be finished with this thing. On a grander scale, this could be, remember that what's happening right now, what this chapter is, represents a much bigger, you know, or maybe I mean is part of something much bigger that you are like moving toward, or that is, you know, we can think about maybe something coming to a close, but it's part of this longer journey. So maybe we're stuck in the immediacy of what's happening. We're still in the 3, which is like towards the beginning. We're now here at this 5. We're reaching this end. And on a broader level, we could be invited to remember that there's so much more beyond this that we still have to explore and that our hearts are calling us toward. And we might need to kind of zoom out for that moment and just remember that. Okay, what we can invite in at this time. I did not see that as the finale, but Okay, yeah. Here we are. Maybe this adds to the idea that we're zooming out of this immediate moment and remembering the bigger picture, remembering that we're on a bigger journey, getting a sense of what this chapter has meant in this bigger journey and where this puts us now. And even bigger than this, we zoom out to this major arcana card, which you've heard me say means that this is bigger than this week, this is bigger than this Taurus season, probably. This is like a much bigger chapter that we are involved in if we zoom out. And we're inviting in separating from that which we have convinced ourselves we are irretrievably bound to, right? This is our vices. This is any relationship that we feel like we have no way to walk away. We're trapped here. This is a job. This is so many things, right? Because it's a major arcana card, it's more an attitude that we probably see show up in many areas of our lives. But particularly this situation, we need to get clear on where we are telling ourselves we're stuck in something that we're not actually, that we could find a way to walk away from. We can transmute through this, and we can shift out through these circles, right? And move out into the broader atmosphere. We can walk away. We're not bound to what's in here. We think we are, and we need to get clear on what's conditioning us to think that, right? What layers of influence are keeping us here? And we need to then be bold and brave enough to create that first step away, to create that first breath of space, right? Just to even realize, oh, I do have agency here. Oh, I can control this. I can walk away. Okay, yeah. Home may be where the heart is. Home may be something we are, right? Like, I certainly see this, and this is not a wand, but we see a 3, 4, 5. We see a sequence. So we understand that when we wandered, we created a new home, and that's certainly what has us attached here, and maybe part of what's coloring what we're walking away from. And we now need to get clear on, what have I been conditioned to think that home is? Maybe I'm still on this journey of finding home, or this has been a chapter in understanding what home means to me. And there are some larger themes I need to assess at this time to get clear on what I need to free myself from. And we saw the 6 of Swords in our Aries new moon eclipse. There's a similar vibe here. But the devil is whatever is telling us that we cannot move into that 6 of Swords. It's whatever is telling us you're stuck here, you have no choice. And this is what we're getting clear on now. Okay, potent stuff. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed, please like this video. Please share it with anyone else who is navigating similar themes, and subscribe so we can talk about what we're bringing into this Taurus new moon next week. I will see you there.